He is the desert warrior, carving the future with his sword. It's the best way to carve the future, with a sword. I guess all the guns and everything are gone. Anyway, welcome back to the channel. Mr. Dan here, of course. Another 1980s review. Today's film is Steel Dawn, directed by Lance Hool, starring Patrick Swayze. 1987. Wow, that's the year that somebody graduated high school. Anyway, yeah, this is one. Listen, this was a staple, probably on cable. I never saw it. I just watched it for the first time a couple days ago. Okay, but it was a staple on the video store shelves, and I suspected correctly it wasn't quite up there on the Mad Max level. Of course, there was just a host of post-apocalyptic films that came out after Mad Max and the Road Warrior. Some of them in Australia, like Battle Truck, and then you had all these Italian ones, many of them set in New York, in the Bronx, Leave the Bronx, Warriors of the Bronx. I don't know all the titles off the top of my head, but I think my man Ginger Ninja reviewed most of those, if you want to check out his channel. There were just so many. And I guess, the idea was, hey, we got a couple $1,000, we get a couple junky vehicles, and we can make our own movie out in the desert or wherever. And some of them weren't great. So I wasn't sure what to expect, and I can't believe I've never seen this. I mean, I do remember this from the video store shelves back in the day, of course. I've been aware of it for years. I knew Brion James was in it, and I'm a huge Brion James fan. You're talking Southern Comfort, Blade Runner, The Fifth Element, Enemy Mine, an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation in a small part. I got to do a top 5 or top 10 Brion James movies. And, the sad thing is, when he passed away, I didn't really notice. I didn't have Instagram, YouTube, anything like that. I was kind of just living life as a younger guy. If a big name died, we probably talked about it at the dinner table, or, me and my college friends or whatever. But he was the type of character actor that there wasn't as much fanfare, and it was only a couple years after that, maybe like 10 years after that, I was like, hey, whatever happened to Brion James? Oh, wow, he's passed away. But yeah, and this is a great role for him. I mean, if you're a Brion James fan, this is a good role. So anyway, in the future, there's very little resources. You got to harness solar power and wheel and deal, and like feudal little empires pop up, controlled by people like Anthony Zerbe, playing a character named Damnal. I don't know. Anyway, and there's this sort of like class of warrior type dudes, and Patrick Swayze's like a wandering one of those, kind of like the old masterless samurai in the samurai movies, the Ronin. And he kind of has a master who's played by John Fujioka, who's a very recognizable character actor, and is from martial arts films and other films, bald guy with mustache. So he gets taken out in the beginning, and I'm not going to tell you the whole plot or anything, by a guy named Sho. Not Show Nuff, okay? Just Sho. Now, he's played by Christopher Neame, and he's, this film feels like an 80s film. He's got this, like, punk rock looking hair and everything. He's like sneering, and he's a pretty good villain, though, I have to say. He actually has a connection to Hammer films. He was in a few Hammer films, some of their later ones when he was quite younger. I believe he was in like Dracula. He played Johnny Alucard in Dracula AD 72, and I think he was in a couple other, he was in License to Kill, actually. So yeah, he was in a couple Hammer films, and recognizable guy. And so there's a pretty good cast in this, to be honest with you. Anthony Zerbe, Brion James, Christopher Neame, and then you also have some other recognizable people show up, like Arnold Vosloo plays a thug, from The Mummy and Hard Target, Dark Man 3, I believe. So a lot of recognizable faces, I think. So essentially, Patrick Swayze's character wanders into this encampment, and Brion James is kind of like the foreman, the gruff boss of it, who wants the machines to keep working and everything because they got to eat and survive and trade with other groups and fend off attacks by robbers and people that want to come in and steal their meager crops and belongings. So Patrick Swayze starts to work there. He has a little confrontation with someone. And, they've got these like kind of solar carts, maybe not solar, but wind-powered vehicles they wheel around with in the desert. So the world building in the film, to the extent that you see it, the buildings, the structures, the vehicles, it's actually pretty cool. I would have to say, when you have the wind-driven vehicles coming at each other, you're walking a fine line of not making that look silly, and they do a pretty good job considering. And you know, I think I'm not going to get into the plot too much, but you know, you got Anthony Zerbe's like a big mean boss who wants to steal everything, and you've got Patrick Swayze just trying to mind his own business and sort of, you know, spend a little time there, you know, pass the time, help them out a little bit, get some food, whatever. He starts to have an attachment with a woman who I believe is played by Lisa Neame, last name, but I believe that was his wife. And their son is played by the director's son, Lance Hool. And I think there's an assistant cameraman named Hool, so it was kind of like a family affair. And as a child actor, he's pretty good. He's okay, especially considering he was like, you know, related to the director. I mean, you know, I know Bird-Eye Gordon's daughter was in a movie once, and I don't think I don't want to be mean, but she wasn't that good. Anyway, Lance Hool kind of went on to be more of a producer, pretty big time producer, in fact, but you know, anyway, they just get in a confrontation with this other group. People get taken hostage. They have fights. There's kind of like, you know, there aren't really any firearms in this film. So he uses a sword, and, you know, the Christopher Neame character is a badass. Patrick Swayze was a dancer. He was very physically fit and flexible. So, you know, a lot of dancers have done quite well in these action roles in Hollywood. So the fight scenes are pretty good. A little better than I thought they were going to be. Is there a little cheese in there? You know, do they do a couple of flips that they don't really need to do and showy moves? Yeah, a couple, but overall, it's pretty good. And I kind of like the fights and everything that they had. I don't know. There's not much else to say. I'm not going to really go blow by blow as far as the plot goes. It's pretty much standard. So it's a little bit of Mad Max, a little bit of Shane, you know, a little bit of samurai movies. They were definitely going for a little Western feel. Samurai movies, of course, Westerns borrowed from samurai movies and back and forth and all that stuff. So it's a little cheesy in parts, but it's a comfortable kind of cheesy. So if you like a little cheesiness in your 80s films, I think you might enjoy this. It's actually, I think, a better movie than you would expect if you've never seen it. Maybe you, most of you probably have seen it already. Most of my friends that are old like me. So you're probably going, Mr. Dan, what took you so long? I'm not really sure, but I'm glad I finally watched it. And, yeah, let me know if you guys want me to do like a top 5 or a top 10 Brion James movies or Brion James characters. And that's it. What are your thoughts about Steel Dawn? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll be back with another film review soon. Thanks.